Hello and welcome to another episode of Lowdown. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the founder of Jogo, David Dwinger, an artificial intelligence startup that's providing the latest edge to those that work in youth development within the football game. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Connor. It's good to be here.
David, for everyone that's listening, I suppose, could you briefly explain what exactly Jogo is?
Yeah, sure. So, in short, it's a platform which captures objective and relevant data every time a player, a youth football player in this case, works on a sport. So, during practice at home, during training on the field at the club, and during matches. And we use a couple forms of technology, artificial intelligence and sensor technology, to capture this data, which we then subsequently use to optimize the individual development of youth players.
And before getting involved with Jogo, David, let's take it back. Were you always involved in football from a young age, or was it something you became interested in as you got older?
Well, I was always fond of football. I did play myself, but I wasn't really good at it, to be honest. There was no pro lost on me, let me put it that way. But no, I was always fond of the game. I lost it for a couple of years once I got a little bit older, but then it reignited again once my oldest son started playing at the age of 4. He's now 13, and with him going through the whole phases of playing locally at the grassroots team, and then through the development of slightly better teams and scouting, and now as a youth pro player, yeah, it the fire started again. Let me put it that way. So yeah, it's good to be back in that field.
And what was your background prior to getting involved with Jogo, David?
For the last 12 to 15 years, I think, I've been working in technology sector for large companies here in the Netherlands and abroad. So a couple of years for HP, Hewlett Packard, ABN AMRO Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, Canon, Schiphol Airport, companies of that size. Predominantly in the software development and maintenance parts for those industries. So I've got a technology background in that sense for the last decade, which I basically used to combine my love for football and technology in doing something I really love, which is building Jogo.
So it was certainly a cross pollination of ideas between your two loves, really, technology and football.
Yeah.
Um, Given, of course, that right now, I mean, working in youth development, working with multiple federations, clubs, academies, not only Holland, but all over Europe and all over the world. Do you believe, I suppose, coming from your technology background, where you have to make a series of calm, focused, rational decisions, does that blend well with the short term nature which we see within the football industry and guys who have had 20, 25 plus years of experience within the industry?
It is a discussion point indeed, and I do see it changing. I do see that there is the football scouts and trainers are becoming more and more open for technology. Almost on a daily basis, you see that change going, which is really nice. Um, and I tend to agree to a certain level, right? What I mean with that is I don't believe that there is a technology solution which um, shows how well a player can play football. It's always open for interpretation. I think what we are building with Jogo comes close, but also won't be conclusive in the end. So I believe that it's a combination of technology, objective data, and the eye of the master, right? So from the scout or the trainer. If you combine both, then you can actually get to a certain point. And I see that change coming. So that's really good.
It's intriguing what you speak of, David, because when it comes to football, especially, there seems to be a consensus of what you should think and not how you should think. I mean, I'm intrigued to hear what was the initial response from academies, and did that subsequently lead to modifications, perhaps to the original prototype?
I think that's a funny question, because the way back in the beginning, which was the company is 13 months old today, but I started the idea about 2 years ago, and I got some pushback in the beginning with regards to, we don't know what the value is of data. And this is coming from one of the bigger clubs here in the Netherlands, the biggest club in the Netherlands. They said we don't know what the value is of data in youth, and which I think is funny, guys, because you already measure your youth. Only you do it once a month on 4 points which are not related to the ball in any way, right? Which is around the speed at the first 10 to 15 meters, the how high they can jump, their weight, and their length. Again, none of them tests contain a ball, which I think is a shame. So the thing we do is we measure 200 data points 400 times a second, which includes all those things, but also a ball, right? So the ability to measure a shot power, leg distribution, fly time, time on the ball, all those stuff, which in itself per data point might not be very interesting to see if somebody develops, but if you look at it over time and the ability to compare those points, then it becomes relevant. And I see that is where you see the change coming, and acceptance, that the fact that technology is better to make objective, provide objective insight.
Of course, and as you said there earlier on, David, I mean, JOGO'S 13 months old today, which is a fantastic achievement from all those involved. I mean, establishing a startup, I mean, isn't an easy thing at all. It's a long, ardent, arduous process, and establishing a startup during COVID particularly isn't easy either. But for you, I suppose the growth of JOGO, has it been more slow, melancholic, arduous, or was there perhaps one eureka moment along the way that, kind of gave you, I suppose, instantaneous feedback that, what, this is a product, this is a service that's going to go far?
Um, well, there was a lot of thought prior to opening the company, right? So it took me about a year and a half, maybe 2 years even, to actually think about what I wanted to build, but because I saw there was no insights in youth development, right? So there was a whole process prior, before starting the company 13 months ago. So by that time I did start a company, it was already quite developed in my head, but still a very small solution. So once I started picking up the conversations, which went from Ajax to Man City to Man United, the federation here in the Netherlands, there were so many clubs willing to talk to me, that shaped the actual solution which we built, definitely. So all those inputs and feedback we received in the beginning allowed us to make a solution which is not just something which came from my mind, but it's actually almost developed together with a lot of people, right? So I think this is the reason why the adoption is going this fast, right? So 13 months old company, but the product itself has been live for the last 2.5, 3 months now, and we're already around 65 clubs using it, which again I think is because of our ability to get so many user feedback even prior to building.
It's very rare that within the football industry, or perhaps any industry, that you have such flexibility where you're able to perhaps adjust to your users or participants' demands. I mean, JOGO itself, for me, is a large decentralized system in terms of all the federations and academies you have working together nearly in tandem. But I suppose, David, if we're to get into the mechanics of using JOGO itself, how does the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and sensor technology work in tandem to provide actionable insights to players?
So if we go back to the moments when they train, right? So again, training at home, training on the field, and during matches. The two technologies, the AI/computer vision and the sensor technology, are complementary but can work independent from each other, right? So if I start with the training at home, practicing at home moment, this actually comes from what I experienced with my son, where he receives a piece of paper once or twice a year with a lot of assignments on it to practice at home, which is from simple ball juggling to V shapes and dribbles, etc. Which he was doing, for which I needed to film and send it through WhatsApp through his trainer. But we have 30 kids in one team, 40 assignments per paper, so that's 1,200 videos, which the trainer obviously is not going to able to see. So because it's simply too much. So what I saw was that it's basically a data leak. There's so much information in there with the guys practicing and practicing, and nobody actually paying attention to it. So that's actually the first thing I wanted to build, a solution using something they already have in their hands anyway, which is their phone, and the ability basically to use that to film themselves during the exercises, and from that video we are able to extract data points live on the phone. So it's not bounced back to the server, it's just live on the phone, which allows us to give direct feedback to the player on his progress with regards to, let's say, ball juggles, but also on quality. So that's how we capture the data on the first moment, which also includes, by the way, some mental and some cognitive testing, for which I will come back later. And the other moments when they're actually on the pitch, we use the sensor, the JOGO'S sensor, which is this one. I'm not sure if it's really visible in the camera. It's a tiny thing. Yeah, and that basically sits in the insoles of the shoes, of the football shoes. And again, that allows to measure 400 times a second, everything related to ball touches, speed and distance, acceleration, deceleration. So that then captures subsequently all three moments, with all that data, being transferred to the platform and showcased through a dashboard to the trainer and player, to give them not only actionable insights. We actually go a step further. We do suggestions based on the data we get, based from every moment and every data point. Maybe a little explanation on that. What I mean by that is, if I go back to the example of my son, he's a 13-year-old, but he has a physique of a 14 and a half, so he's a really tall, big boy. But in the same team, we have a guy which is half his size, right? So he has a physique of a 9-year-old, but they're actually the same age almost. So that's the training they get is therefore suboptimal for both, right? From a physical perspective. So, and this is what the system allows us to, or allows actually the trainer to do, to focus on the whole team, on developing on technical and tactical abilities, where the system based on data and sports science will give assignments specifically to the players to practice at home, specifically tailored for the person, looking at their age, their training age, their biological age, their status of their health, their stamina, everything.
I think it's utterly fascinating that, from what it sounds like, David, is, and having used the platform myself, it's very, very interactive. But for me, what I most enjoy about it is, in fact, what you just spoke about, the benchmark comparisons between different ages and different positions, which, if you see the future of football, what we're moving into fastly is a positionless game, where players aren't being expected to perhaps play a position, but they're expected to have different roles and responsibilities, which perhaps must adhere to. I mean, we've seen from COVID alone, players being taken away from clubs, having to spend time at home, such as your son, and send videos on WhatsApp to his coach of him doing juggling exercises, for example. Do you see more of an added emphasis to shift away from that bespoke model of youth development? I mean, what I'm trying to get at, David, it's becoming more and more individualistic and more at the behest of the player's ownership.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the reality is that we started thinking about, or I started thinking about this way ahead of COVID, because of that, especially in youth, they're all so much different, right? So the difference between chronological age and biological age and training age is tremendous at that, when they're 12 or 13 or whatever. So that's where I saw that there's a real gap. COVID just added to that, right? The ability to train from a distance, and even though we're getting out of COVID slowly, it's obviously too short-sighted to think that this was it, right? So things are going to happen in the future like this. So allowing to optimize or to provide optimized training from a distance, I think is relevant everywhere, not just in football. Actually, we got a lot of requests from hockey, from rugby, from tennis, even schools, um, uh, private gyms, etc. The ability to communicate over a distance is growing.
Massive. And I mean, the data you have not only tracks physical and technical output, as you spoke about, it also tracks cognitive abilities. I mean, we see top
Yeah,
class managers like Bayern Munich's Julian Nagelsmann. You know, he uses software to improve the cognitive speed of his players. I mean, do you believe the cognitive aspect of football has been perhaps long overlooked? And maybe in that instance, if so, David, could you perhaps provide us with some examples of the cognitive games you guys have?
yeah. So I think it's becoming more and more important to not just measure the cognitive abilities, but to have the brain power to actually play one of the most difficult games in the world, right? So if you're not a player and you don't understand the game, you see, 22 kids running around in the field kicking the ball, right? It's becoming more and more like chess almost, right? So it's thinking way ahead. We've seen that in the last Champions League a final as well, where I think it might have been quite unexpected what happened there. But it's becoming more and more a chess game, right? Even in youth. So I think to have the cognitive ability to play football is becoming just as important to have the technical skill and the physique for it. Absolutely. So some of the clubs here in the Netherlands have started testing and developed specialized tests to measure their football brain. They call it, which I think is really relevant. I'm not saying you need to be cognitive really, really strong to play football. What I'm saying, if you want to play at the highest level, it is a requirement to if you want to reach that. It's becoming more and more important, absolutely. So how we do that, we want to build something which is nice for the player to use, almost like a game. On the other hand, giving a lot of insights, right? So what we do again, using the player's phone, and the trainer give give trainer the ability to communicate assignments to their players. You can add as a trainer cognitive challenges, and this could be an assignment which combines a ball dribble with mathematical questions or image recognition, where you see in a flash, I don't know, the word Neymar, and then you see 2 or 3 images from Neymar, Ronaldo, and Messi. You need to choose which one. It's you can look at our site jogo.ai and you see the examples of how we do that. And the cool stuff about this is that for the player, it's almost like a game, because he's playing with his ball, he's looking into his phone from a distance, and he sees these assignments, and he needs to either dribble to the right answer or select something in the air of the right answer, where it feels like a game, almost like an arcade game. The cool stuff which we can actually measure there is the dribbles on the ball, the quality of the dribble, the number of questions they're able to process, the level of questions they're able to process, the reaction times. Reaction times compares to an easy question or a difficult question, which says something about what type of player you are, right? So if I let my son do these things, and he's a 2008 birth year, so he's now just turned under 14. So if I ask him what's 3 times 7, it's fairly easy to give the right answer, right? If I ask him what's 14.2 times 6.3, it becomes really difficult for us as well. So the challenge is, or the key metric is he going to calculate or is he going to guess, right? I know mine is going to calculate, it's going to try to get it right, which makes him a defender. From your attacking players, you want them to make a decision, right or wrong, I don't care, just go for it, which translates in ball must go into the net. right? So I'm just going to shoot at goal. So it's stuff like that, which is, again, it's not a hard yes no. It's just another data point to see what type of player they are. And that's, again, all in all, becoming really interesting to see how you can use all that data to not just develop the player, but to optimize his development by putting him in positions which are best fit for his cognitive levels, physical levels, and technical and tactical skills.
In a way, you're nearly quantifying the soft skills, such as perhaps an aptitude for risk. I mean, how young should clubs or players start this cognitive process?
Anything before the age of 15 is not really optimal to measure cognitive abilities. From the age of 15, it's really starting to develop. However, you can get early indications, obviously, right? So it's just not going to be really conclusive. There is a question behind that: how young should a club start to do scouting in the first place, right? There's a big discussion going in the Netherlands that the big clubs here, the big three, are just reducing the age almost every year. I think they're now scouting kids from 6-year-olds. Yeah, I think that's fairly challenging to see if anybody can play football at 6-year-old. But I think it's even difficult to see at 40-year-old. It's just that if you look at it over time, then you can see how they're really developing from a technical perspective, physical perspective, again, all those pillars. Then cognitive over time just becomes more relevant to measure.
Of course, I think it's having multiple reference points off which to evaluate a player's performance, perhaps.
Absolutely.
It's always one of those, I mean, if you judge a fish's ability to climb a tree, perhaps maybe you're asking the wrong question again, totally.
Absolutely, and there's I'm going to respond to, you know what, the thing is, going back to my previous point, that we can't say who is a good player based on Jogo. We can only say who is developing better than another. So from a Jogo perspective, we are not saying what's right or what's wrong. We're just saying this is fact. This is actuals. For example, if you would put Messi through our system, his leg distribution is obviously not that great, right? He's a 98% lefty, but he manages quite well with that left foot. So it's what you put against those weaknesses, if you count his left leg as a weakness. But if you look at it from an optimal perspective, you want your player to be 50-50 leg distribution, right? The ability to use whatever you want, have optimal speeds, sprints, and acceleration and deceleration powers, etc. But that's simply not the case. That's not how we're built. So what you want to do is have this view of what would be best, then look at the actuals, and then see how you can develop those points, those strong points, right? So if somebody is really good at passing and shooting, let's focus on that rather than maybe, I don't know, something else which he might not be so good at, positioning, I don't know, for example, right? So improving a weak point is very, very difficult. Sure, there are steps to be made and you should try it, but it's, in my opinion, better to focus on the strong points and make that into real weapons. Again, something you can see using the platform.
Perhaps, I mean, if you were to peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, David, maybe it's the people that are given the technology. Maybe they actually misinterpret the value of it altogether, or misinterpret, I mean, how important the cognitive load really is in football. Maybe there is that bit of an added focus and emphasis we should be placing on education, the coaches, coaching the coaches, coaching academy directors, and how to implement the software. I mean,
yeah.
If perhaps if you're on the other side of this, David, if you were in fact in charge of your own academy, how would you look to integrate what the Jogo technology? How would you look to integrate that within your academy system?
I would probably look at it indeed, as you said, to train the trainer. I would want to see what they are doing, right? So if my view of an academy is, let's say my vision is that leg distribution is the ultimate thing to measure. I want all my players to have 50-50 leg distribution and have equal shot power and finesse in their feet. By giving out my vision for that, to my trainers, who then subsequently need to do the actual training on the pitches. I want to know if they're actually doing it. So if I can measure that by basically seeing what's happening on the field through the leg distribution of the players, using the sensors, and I can see, you know what, guys, this is the 2008 birth year, where our expectation is that they're already at a 60-40 leg distribution rather than the average. It's probably 80-20, 90-10, maybe even. Then that figure needs to go down to the ultimate vision, right? So I can look at the players, how they are, but I can definitely look at the trainers to see if they carry out the vision. Which again, I would be very interested in using it this way, not just again for the players, but also to look at how the trainers are doing.
And I suppose focusing on the word there, vision. I mean, it certainly is exciting times ahead for Jogo. I mean, currently involved with 60 plus academies and partnering with the Innovation Hub now with Valencia. What is the next frontier for Jogo?
We are, as you mentioned, we are indeed partnering with the Valencia Innovation Hub, but there's a couple of more really exciting conversations we're having with some beautiful English clubs, and federations. We're in a testing phase with FIFA, which is also a great chance to work with them on a program to develop youth globally, right? So from a romantic vision perspective, there's 200 million youth players in the world. It would be great if all of them could have our system, right? That's first of all. So we actually have started some programs to reach as many as possible to use the app for free. So that's one. That's the romantic side. I want to improve level of football just by 1%. That will be awesome, right? Around the world. So that's one. From a technical perspective, I'm always talking about data stacking, right? This is where I see the future of football. You have multiple sports technology companies already out there, right? So Catapult, a big one, obviously, with the GPS trackers. You have Polar for the heartbeat. You have camera systems. I think all of them great systems. Independently, I would argue the relevance of them. I would even argue the relevance of my own system if it was just the sensors or just the AI or just the cognitive part. I think you need to have everything. Which I'm not saying we're going to build everything, not at all. We're building what we're good at, which is the AI and the sensor part. But if you would add on top that layer of GPS and video and all those and heartbeat, maybe add everything on top of each other and then do smart things with that data, I think you would have the ultimate system to look at optimized player development, not even youth anymore. Then it's just across the board.
And I suppose as somebody who's been there, done that, or is currently doing it right now and is constantly adjusting their model, refining their existing product and service, I mean, have you advice, David, for anyone hoping to launch their own startup, be it within football or sports or any other industry?
My advice to sports startups is let's see if you can collaborate as soon as possible with others. It's as you said, it's really difficult to start your own startup, or at least to make it. That is challenging. To start is not that difficult, but to make it is challenging. And it's virtually impossible to do it on your own, right? So and on your own does also mean the people who work with you. So you need launching customers, launching partners, or companies who have the ability to open doors for you. I think that is the most important thing. I think for us, what the difference is that we have three things really strong. We have a very strong product, which is not like a Me Too product. It's not a version of something. What we do is unique, the way we do it. So that's one. We have a very, very strong team. Everybody with us has some form of relation with football. our head of legal, she used to play for the youth team, the national youth team. Our head of marketing is an ex keeper for the Ajax national women's team. Our COO is an ex-manager of one of the pro teams here in the Netherlands for 4 years, worked for UEFA, etc. There's many more of us actually. Pretty much everybody has a connection in network. So it's that builds up number 3. It's the network, right? So we have the product, we have a great team and the network, which allows us to talk to companies and clubs of that size very easily. Which I think in sports, be it football or anything else, just make sure you talk to the right people and connect yourself to them as soon as possible.
Of course. You make it sound so easy, David, but
I wasn't this great when I started though, so it's not that easy.
It's only been 13 months, but David, as I'm sure a lot of people will, where's the best place online to connect with yourself or with Jogo?
Well, just check out the website, www.jogo.ai, or send me an email, david@jogo.ai, and I'm happy to talk. Always willing to talk about Jogo.
Fantastic. Yeah, and for everybody listening, I'd like to give a big shout out and thanks to David. What he's doing with Jogo is fantastic at the moment. For anybody particularly involved in youth development and interested from the analytics side of things as well, especially check him out. Thanks, David.
Thanks very much. Good to be here. Thanks, Connor.